Hello and welcome to our July 3rd, 2026 Freshet Friday podcast. I hope everyone had a fantastic Canada Day. We've got a full show this week, starting with a bit of hometown Hollywood, with news about how the Michael J. Fox Theatre in Burnaby is now looking at a more hopeful future, and why New Westminster residents may be able to spot location landmarks in a new Netflix film. We'll also look at how Port Moody is working to ease traffic on a busy overpass, why some Burnaby residents are upset about homeless shelter on a planned park site, and how Canada Day was celebrated in our communities. I'm your host, Jeff Wheelwright, and with me on the podcast this week are the veteran journalists and founders of Freshet News, Mario Bartel, Teresa McManus, and Cornelia Naylor, with their take on all of these happenings and more in Burnaby, New Westminster, and the Tri-Cities. Welcome back, team.
Hey,
Hi,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
All right, I'm going to start with this little Hollywood North segment. So, Teresa, do you want to tell us about what's happening with the Michael J. Fox Theatre in Burnaby?
Yeah, the Michael J. Fox Theater is at Burnaby South Secondary School, and the school district was going to restrict it to school use only starting on July 1st. So that would have meant that community groups that would book that space for different arts productions, theater productions, they wouldn't have been able to do so. The city of Burnaby had previously announced that it would spend or it would give the school district a $300,000 grant to continue that use while they look for another operator. The district said that that just wasn't going to work, that they really have to focus their efforts on education. The city came back with a $400,000 grant, and that will pave the way for the district to continue allowing community groups to use that theater for the coming year. And that's going to be a one-year period starting July 2026. This has sort of been sort of a back and forth kind of thing for the last, well, probably more than a year. The district's sort of in a pickle because finances are tight with school districts across the province. And so they want to be spending their money on education classrooms. And when the previous operator, the nonprofit operator, ceased to be at that theater anymore, sort of fell upon the school board and the school district to take over. And that's just not something that they're really keen to do. The city didn't want to take it over. And I think there had been some, delegations to this board, from folks from, say, IATSE, for example, the Alliance of Theatre and Stage Employees, as well as from a group called the Save the Michael J. Fox Theatre Campaign. And they really appealed to the school board to do what they could to try to allow community use to continue there. This is all, I will add, happening at a time when Massey Theatre in New Westminster is also experiencing a closure. So theater space is really critical for these community organizations. So Michael J. Fox Theatre will continue to have community use for the coming year, and the Burnaby School District will be exploring options for having a different operator come in there and take over that facility.
Okay, great. Thank you. And continuing with our Hollywood theme, Mario, you want to tell us about what Netflix has been doing in New Westminster?
They've been doing a lot, actually, and the latest thing that they've done, we got a press release last week from Netflix reminding us that a show that was filmed here last year called Voicemails for Isabel is now on the streaming network. And some key scenes were filmed in New Westminster. I recall seeing on one of the Facebook groups some discussion about a giant traffic jam that suddenly appeared on Columbia Street and Christmas decorations when it wasn't the Christmas season. Well, it turns out that was for this production. They dressed up. It was supposed to be a street in San Francisco where one of the main characters, Jill, lives. So they used Columbia Street for some sort of scene. I haven't seen the movie yet, so I don't exactly know what's going on. I think there was some kind of traffic jam, and Jill was trying to get somewhere, and someone was trying to meet Jill. And they also used a Mexican restaurant in Uptown, the Playa Taquiera, for a key scene there. And it's just, another fun little thing that makes local people want to watch something. If anyone's familiar with Virgin River, there's several scenes that have been filmed in New Westminster, including one in the neighborhood where I used to live, Grow and First Street. That's Doc's house. And also several scenes in Burnaby were filmed there. I think the Anvil Center might have been used for something once, a courthouse or something like that, interior. So yeah, that's part of the fun of living in Hollywood North is when you go to the movies or watch something on a streaming service or on TV, you can kind of see, hey, there's someplace I'm familiar with, and you end up playing spot the location. Sometimes that's the only thing worth doing for some of these productions, but it's sort of a fun little sideline to have.
Yeah, it is, and I'm a big fan of doing that too. I remember a few years ago, I think it was in 2023, there was a series, a very short-lived series apparently, called Rise of the Pink Ladies, which was a kind of a prequel to the movie Grease that was filmed in New Westminster, and there was all these great old classic cars from the '50s. I remember seeing them lined up, and I thought, "Oh, I wonder what that's about." And that's indeed what it was about. So you're right, Mario. It's very cool.
We've become so used to these production trucks and trailers all around the city, and that, you become sort of immune to it, and just sort of, oh, well, there's another production in town. You don't really pay it much heed. But I remember back in the '90s when a film production coming to town was a really big deal, and I staked out the Royal City Center outdoors because they were filming a Tom Arnold movie there, and like Tom Arnold was kind of an A-minus star back then, and of course the production team sends assistants around to try and block any kind of photography of anything going on. So now you just sort of, oh well, it's another production. Who cares? They're doing their work. I mean, that's just what the nature of the business is, and unless some really big bona fide A-list stars in town, you don't pay much heed anymore.
I remember walking past the Anvil Center, and the window was smashed out, and there was a man lying there with his head in a pool of blood. and and then I was like, "What is going on here?" Because I'm a crime reporter, so clearly there was production people around. What I thought was really funny is the way they moved the pool of blood around with their foot, because it was just a rubber pool of blood. The guy gets up, and they kind of shift it around with their foot to get it in the right spot. Yeah, always
That's
fun, like
funny.
Miriam said, when you come upon a scene like that. I also ran into those classic cars for the Pink Ladies and did a story about that, actually.
What,
Speaking
what
of blood, I once was at New Westminster City Hall back in the 1990s when they were filming a movie called In Cold Blood, and it starred Anthony Edwards, who was then a big star on ER, and Eric Roberts, Julia's brother. And yeah, so I interviewed some folks at that point in time, and a few weeks later, I saw quotes that I had carefully crafted from people show up in a tabloid magazine, that begins with an E, that's on the newsstands. Yeah, so but I was pretty excited to see Anthony Edwards back in the day as a big ER fan.
I think it was Mission Impossible 4 filmed they used a sound studio down in South Burnaby in the South Fraser Business Park area. And I remember them one day blocking off the streets, and they had a big chase scene along South Fraser Way that was ultimately the stand-in for a business park in Moscow.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah, it's always amazing to see how many places we stand in for. I have so many memories of various TV shows, particularly all those superhero shows. There were so many of them filmed in and around here. I remember the Batwoman TV series, for example, that was being filmed out in Burnaby, and they had the art gallery downtown as the police headquarters for Gotham City, which was pretty cool. So anyway, we could go on about this one for,
Go on
for
and
a
on.
long time, and it would be a lot of fun.
Why don't we?
No news today.
Well, my favorite Vancouver movie story was there was a production of The Man in the High Castle, which was that big Amazon production about what would have happened if the Nazis won the Second World War. So I'm downtown, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of cars with like swastikas on the license plates. Um, and I was working at this building on Canby, just near BC Place, and there was a little kind of courtyard. And outside our window, there's a shootout between some Nazis and the people who were fighting against them. So there's, like people in full on Nazi uniforms, and there's like 1940s and 1950s cars and a couple of movie stars. And we were supposed to be having a meeting. This is when I was working for a tech company, and we're just looking out the window. Meeting's completely stopped, and we're just sitting there looking and taking pictures. It was so cool.
They again filmed on the steps of New Westminster City Hall.
Well, and the cars were cool as well. It's always about the cars for me. So, Mario, you were talking about all of the traffic jams that featured in this new Netflix film. Well, I want to talk to you about a traffic jam that's been happening in Port Moody at an overpass, which is now being widened to ease that traffic jam. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, the railway overpass over the CPKC line that runs through Port Moody and into Coquitlam. It's been a growing pinch point for traffic. There's 3 lanes that one becomes a dedicated left turn lane, which becomes 2 lanes through the narrowing of the median. And then there's 2 lanes heading into Coquitlam along the Barnett Highway from St. John Street right at the Ioko intersection. And as the cities east of Port Moody have grown and North Port Moody up in the Heritage Woods area has grown, and also the area around Moody Town Center area has grown. More and more cars are trying to navigate that pinch point, especially in afternoon rush hour. Despite the adjacent location of the Inlet Center SkyTrain station, a lot of people are still using their cars, and traffic does tend to get backed up. I mean, I know I've learned whenever I go into Port Moody, I'm not going to go in at the afternoon rush hour because it can get backed up pretty quickly. So last November, one of the councillors, Callan Morrison, did put a motion forward to council to have staff look at ways to widen that overpass. It's due for some rehabilitation work and some seismic upgrades. So perhaps there could be efficiencies found by doing that all at once and seeing if it could be wide. There's not a lot of space to work with. There's just a standard size sidewalk on the eastbound side, and there is a wider pathway on the westbound side where the SkyTrain station is. So staff came back with a few weeks ago with their recommendation to widen the overpass as far as it could with the current infrastructure there, and then that would allow an extra lane, and to close off that lane for the time being to allow it to be used for active transportation, cyclists, pedestrians, scooters, those kind of things. And in the meantime, an extra overpass, sort of a flying overpass beside it, would be built that would then eventually become the active transportation overpass. Not unlike what's happening with parts of the new Stellawasam Bridge in New Westminster, where TransLink and the province have gone to great lengths to ensure active transportation can be accommodated on that bridge. And I know, having ridden across it for the first time this past weekend, it's quite nice. It's only one side is open so far, but we get these fancy little exclusive overpasses to use to get onto the bridge, and it's quite a good experience compared to the way the old Patello Bridge used to be. And that was staff's recommendation. However, council did not like that idea, and as the mayor said, and a couple of the councillors agreed, to widen an overpass and then close it off immediately to an extra lane of traffic would probably have drivers losing their minds who are caught in those traffic jams. So further discussion was had, and it was decided that yes, they will do what they can to widen the overpass now, which will mean during the seismic work that's to come, and the sidewalk will be widened slightly, but still not enough for good active transportation links. And it should be noted that right now there's not a lot connecting to that for active transportation. Port Moody is extending the active transportation path on the south side of St. John Street. They're in the process of extending that and will eventually connect to that overpass. Coquitlam hasn't got any plan currently to do the eastbound side of Barnett Highway. They are going to do something on the northbound side because there'll be lots of new development on that side. But they say the southbound side, the eastbound side, is mostly for industrial, small business parks and that, the car dealership right when you get over that overpass. So that's another thing about, let's just kind of hold off on the active transportation component of this. But, as much as it is an east-west corridor for motorists, it is an east-west corridor for cyclists and pedestrians. And so, yeah, I did get some comment from Hub, the cycling advocacy group, that will be in the newspaper edition of this story, talking about that and their desire to see better east-west connections through Port Moody and into Coquitlam. So yeah, it's the work has to be done by the end of 2027. The city staff report explained, because they're eligible for grants from TransLink, and that eligibility expires at the end of next year. So if the project isn't done, they'll lose that money. So yeah, the ironic thing is, to build all this stuff and rehabilitate the bridge, motorists can expect a lot of slow traffic in the coming year, I would imagine.
So short-term pain for longer-term gain.
Well, will it be, though? I mean, as we've seen with other big construction projects to increase capacity of roads, it quickly fills up. I know you drive out to the Fraser Valley now, and it's been a pretty frustrating experience for the past couple of years. Is that widening project has been ongoing, and you can get stuck in massive traffic jams, eastbound and westbound, depending on the time of day, because to accommodate the construction of the extra lanes when they had this great opportunity up the middle, up the median, which was wide open, to build the light rail that could have carried so many more people. So, once development happens, once the road is widened, well, then now people will say, and developers will say, now people will live here who are going to be commuting into the city or elsewhere. So let's just build more housing, bringing even more traffic. I mean, that's something that's called induced demand. And it happens time and again and is a major talking point for all these kind of projects.
I want to talk about another controversy in our communities in Burnaby, where there is a homeless shelter on a site that some residents would like to be a park.
Yeah, this was an interesting one to me because of the park plan. So I like looking at letters that people write into the city. They're posted with every regular public council meeting. And back in May, I saw a bunch related or from people living at the Kin Collection townhouse development that's at 6085 Ermine Street, complaining about a shelter right next door at 7320 Buller Avenue. This is in the Royal Oak City sort of area, the Royal Oak Community Plan area. And now people complaining about shelters is not unusual, but what caught my eye here is that what the residents said is that when they bought their homes, they were told that the buildings next door would be demolished and that property would be transformed into a park. And indeed, it turns out that there's a park plan for that property that dates back to the 1999 Royal Oak Community Plan that had at least part of that property and two other adjacent properties earmarked for a park. And more recently, council amended that community plan in 2021 to include all of that property at 7320 Buller in a future 2.54 acre park. A city report back then in 2021 said that the property was being leased by a film production company, but that report said that that lease was up in 2024. And so because the city owned all the properties and that lease would be up, they would be ready for park development in mid-2024. Kin Collection residents, meanwhile, that development by Beatty was finished and residents moved in 2024. But that building was still standing. No plans for it was being used as a temporary winter-only shelter for unhoused people. And then in May, those residents found out that it was now going to be used as a year-round 24/7 shelter until 2028. So they're frustrated at increased property crime, litter, open drug use, those kinds of things in the neighborhood. The townhouse complex was marketed as having, a planned city park next door. It was marketed as a family-friendly situation, and so there are kids growing up there. Instead of looking at a park, they're looking at the back of a big old warehouse. No one at the city's planning and development department agreed to be interviewed by me about this, what the holdup was, and how the shelter even got in there. But General Manager Ed Kozak sent me an emailed statement that said, quote, "Council decided the shelter was important to continue operating and to begin the transition to the park in 2028, unquote. So when I asked, Mayor Mike Hurley agreed to be interviewed, but when I asked him, he said the decision to build the park in 2028 instead of 2024, at which time all the areas had been rezoned and the city owned all of them and the film company was gone. He said it wasn't because of the shelter. First, he said that it wasn't that wasn't a priority for the Parks Department at the time. But then he walked back that statement and said that's not what he meant, and that in fact park planning takes a little bit of time. And then he said further that parks only get so much of a budget. I kind of pressed him on the idea that City Council sets the budget, and he then started talking about BC Housing and the province and how they're really responsible for dealing with housing and how it's not the city's technically the city's job to take care of homeless people. but something needs to be done. So he said, one of the main complaints in the city is encampments in parks and green spaces and alleys, and the city by law isn't allowed to remove them unless they have some place to put them. So shelters are needed, and it's a real catch-22. So he said that this property at Buller Avenue was the only property that the city might have to deal with this. He said that the city's working closely with the kin collection residents to meet their needs, and he talked about there being a big balancing act. He did, however, confirm and commit to, he said that those properties are coming down, that those buildings are coming down in 2028. So that's now on the public record. And I've heard from some kin collection residents who are happy that that is on the public record so that they can come back in 2028. And hopefully those buildings are gone and there is green space for them. But then again, there's still the problem of housing, the issue of housing for people who are unhoused. So like the mayor said, it is a balancing act.
So when council's talking about this, were there any representatives of the people who are living at the homeless shelter?
Well, I don't know that anyone was consulted necessarily because those decisions were made behind closed doors.
Okay.
These were closed door decisions where they release the minutes, but there's not a whole lot that you can learn from those. Mm. So, I mean, the kin collection residents definitely said that they were not consulted.
Right. Well, fascinating. And it sounds like this one is going to continue for a while.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I know there's also controversy happening in New West, and there's a call for an apology from the mayor. Teresa, can you tell me about why the mayor is being asked to apologize?
This one is based on a resident who wrote to the city's ethics commissioner and stated that they found that the mayor had breached the city's council's code of conduct. The interim ethics commissioner looked into it and said that a couple of the points did not merit any kind of breach of the code of conduct, but one in fact did, in which Mayor Patrick Johnstone had referred to bald-faced lies in a post on Blue Sky. Liam Robert Scott, a student that is working with us this summer, he's a Reed Mercer Scholarship recipient, and he covered the meeting at City Council on Monday. There were 4 members of council present there. Mayor Johnstone, who was the respondent in this matter, he was not there, nor were Tasha Henderson or Daniel Fontaine. But the other 4 councillors, they agreed to a motion that had been put forward by Councillor Paul Minhas, and that was basically to ask that Mayor Johnstone remove the offending post from Blue Sky and that he make a formal apology to Daniel Fontaine. Now, this all stems from a discussion that occurred in council chambers during a rather heated discussion about the city's 2026 budget. So where this left off at the end of the Monday's meeting was that because the motion that was approved by council was a bit different than what had originally been recommended by the ethics commissioner, Mayor Johnstone does have an opportunity to respond, so it's possible that there will be another meeting that will be called to consider this issue. The city solicitor did say that should he remove the post and should he apologize before that point in time, that they could avoid having another meeting.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Teresa, and welcome to Liam.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
And
he's a Langara college student, a Langara journalism student. They have the Reed Mercer Scholarship Program provides funds so that people can work and intern at various cooperating Canadian publications. And Liam chose our publication, and we're really happy to have him.
I want to talk a little bit, Cornelia, about the controversy that's brewing around the naming of a new main stage at the Shadbolt Theatre. And this is to do with the James Cowan Theatre, which was established in 1971. I know that there's the new Main Stage Theatre, which is going to be opening next year, and it's not going to be the James Cowan Theatre anymore. And that doesn't sit well with some of James Cowan's descendants, I understand.
Yeah, that's right. The old theater was built in the 1940s as a gym originally. So it's really old and really needed to be replaced. It was named after James Cowan, a former Vancouver police constable, a World War I veteran, and a local roofing contractor who helped found the Valley View Ratepayers Association, sort of in the Deer Lake area. It's that capacity that put his name on a civic building, because he was always at Burnaby's Municipal Council recommending community improvements such as widening roads and installing streetlights. Just before his death in 1967, I believe, Burnaby's then Reeve Allen Emmett put Cowan's name on the gym/hall, which was then renamed James Cowan Theatre and has been kind of a center of culture in the city for many, many decades. For some time, though, Jennifer Harris, James Cowan's great-granddaughter, has been dissatisfied with the fact that his name was no longer anywhere on the outside of the building. People who've gone to that theater will know that there was a neon sign inside in an interior hallway that showed where it was, but she wanted there to be more recognition on the outside of the building. So you can imagine her dismay when she found out, when she was told by the city in May that the new building wasn't going to have his name on it at all. So in an email from Public Affairs Manager Chris Bryan, she was told that it's the city's practice to decommission names when civic facilities bearing them are demolished. But she hasn't given up. She is scheduled to speak at the city's Executive Committee of Council on Tuesday to plead her case. And she says that her great-grandfather was her hero, even though she died before she could meet him. But she heard stories about him from her great-granny, Sylvia Cohen, who lived until she was 102. So, yeah, Harris wants to retain the name. She's upset about the local history that's lost when the city removes names like her great-grandfather's from public buildings.
Wow. Well, again, that one looks like it's going to run for a bit, but it'll have to be sorted out before next year when the whole thing opens. So thank you for that story, Cornelia. And now I want to turn to this week's celebration of Canada Day. And I know we were all out celebrating one way or another. Mario, you had some great pictures. Do you want to tell us about the celebrations you saw?
Well, last year we were part of the celebrations as part of our Save Our Local News campaign. We had a table there and we're in the midst of it all. So this year was a little bit of a different experience to head up there and shoot some photos. And it was quite, I don't know if I was just kind of so focused on what we were up to last year that I didn't really notice what a sprawling event it was. It took over both the big fields at Queen's Park, the field in the baseball stadium, and also the next door soccer pitch and diamonds, as well as the drive in between the two and into the Arenex. There were also some kind of event going on in the Arenex. And it was a lot of fun. There were a lot of kids there, a lot of families enjoying the day, and a lot of red and white. So that always makes for good photos. Red is a favorite color of photographers, especially when you have nice dark green trees as your backgrounds. And yeah, it was just a good vibe. And it was kind of like a huge picnic. There were food trucks, so people weren't really bringing their own picnic stuff, but New West put on a pretty good event. I didn't stick around long enough for the drone show in the evening, so I don't know how that turned out. But yeah, it was a fun day.
I'll just jump in there, and Mario sort of touched on it, like not knowing how big the crowds were this year compared to last year. And I did reach out to New West City Hall, and they tell me that they estimate that there was about 12,000 people there this year, which is way more than the numbers that went there last year or that were attending the celebration down in Pier Park. As New West residents may remember, for many, many years, this was held at Queen's Park. So at some point, they decided to move it down to Pier Park. Then there had been a request from, I think it was Councillor Paul Minhas, that they move it back uptown to Queen's Park or to even Queensborough, to a more accessible location. They were talking about it not being super accessible down there on the waterfront. But yeah, the move uptown seems to have worked because it was jumping there. I did go back in time to see the drone show because honestly, I'd never seen a drone show, so I have no idea what to compare it to. It was pretty entertaining. The biggest cheers seemed to be for when the New West came up in written letters across the sky. The lacrosse sticks were pretty popular, as was the soccer ball got a big round of applause. One person who did not like the drone show was a fellow that I met on my way out of the park, and he was a fellow from Texas who was questioning where the fireworks were and what we were doing for July 4th. And I said, we're not doing anything for July 4th.
Watching this,
You'll
watching
have to go
Canada's
back.
soccer match.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So he was adamant about finding fireworks. And at 10:30 at night on Canada Day, I think he was probably out of luck. So
It's funny you mentioned that, Teresa, because, in this era of when we are inundated with so much darkness from south of the border and the news that goes on down there, one thing that really struck me about the celebrations at Queen Park was, yeah, it's huge now compared to, because I used to cover it back in the day when it was at the band
mhm.
shell, and it was maybe a couple hundred people, and they get the free, little maple
Tony
cookies.
Antonius was giving out the
Yeah.
maple cream cookies.
And down at Pier Park, I remember going there as well, but, just the diversity of the crowd. So many different nationalities represented. Yes, everyone wearing red and white, a lot of people walking. I park a couple blocks away, but it wasn't that bad. It's just a short walk. So a lot of people were walking there too, and, that's a testimony to New Westminster's walkability, but I think, just the population that's coming into the city and moving into some of the condo projects downtown and some of the projects uptown to the rental towers and that. As we saw in the Kayak Parade. Very diverse community and very rich in its diversity, and it's great to celebrate that as now being a Canadian too.
Thank you for that, Mario. I actually also went to a couple of Canada Day events. I went to Edmonds Community Center in the park in front of it, and there were a lot of people there. And in fact, there was a stage full of local politicians, including MPs and MLAs, and Burnaby Mayor Mike Hurley was there, and several councillors were there. Um, lots of speeches, lots of "How much do you love Canada?" and lots of people cheering. There was one table where they were giving away copies of Freshet News, which
Oh,
was wonderful to see. And then in the evening, my wife and I went to Castle Park in Port Coquitlam, and again, there was just tons and tons of people. And the big attraction there, at least for me, was April Wine. So this classic '70s band, whom I have not seen perform in person since 1973, was fantastic. It was a lot of fun and just a wonderful vibe, as you say. And everybody excited to be there, excited to celebrate, um, and more participation than I've seen in Canada Day than I've seen for quite a number of years. So great
that
to see.
is FIFA? Do you think it's the World Cup?
I think it's that, but also, as Mario says, I think that there is some stuff. It's no coincidence that yesterday Brian Adams also chose to release a song called 51st State, which I would advise everybody to go listen to. It was great. But I think that had a little bit to do with it as well. So, all right, on that note, I'm going to turn to our Freshet 911 segment. And Cornelia, I'm going to call on you first. I see you have a story about the Burnaby RCMP seizing drugs and guns and precursor chemicals and all sorts. What was that one about?
There were no all sorts. They did not seize all sorts. Tasty as those are.
You never know. They might have been in one of the bags with the drugs. Who knows?
Yes. Yeah, Burnaby RCMP put out a news release this week about a seizure on April 1st. This all started with a traffic stop, July 30th, 2025. So RCMP officers with the Burnaby Gang Enforcement Team pulled over a vehicle and seized 4 kilograms of precursor chemicals commonly used to make fentanyl. So that sparked, police said that sparked an investigation. They continued to investigate the driver, which produced 3 more suspects and several crime scenes. It all culminated in 5 search warrants being executed simultaneously at locations in Richmond, and these were at 3 homes and 2 shipping containers. And they seized nearly $30,000 in cash, 2 vehicles, 4 handguns, 2 tactical shotguns, large quantities of ammunition, all of which the police provided photos for, and 2,900 contraband cigarettes and nearly 6,800 kilograms of finished product and precursor chemicals. Some of those finished products were methamphetamine, fentanyl, and oxycodone, according to the RCMP. And so that was a big a big bust for the Burnaby RCMP anti-gang squad.
Wow. And Teresa, I understand you have something as well.
Yeah, the New Westminster Police Department sent out a news release that they had received a call on Canada Day at about 10 o'clock in the morning from someone who described that they had seen someone carrying what they thought was a grenade at a dog park in Ryle Park in Queensborough. And so the police rushed to the park. They secured the scene, and then they used their drone. That drone is being used a lot in New
Wow.
Westminster, and they used the drone to search the area. At which the point they found out that it was a butane lighter that was shaped like a grenade. So the park was soon reopened, and again, Sergeant Andrew Lever has stated that these lighters are foolish and they're dangerous, and he says nothing about them is clever or funny. And this does come just a couple of months after the police had a similar response to an incident in the downtown. Back in April, they had received multiple reports from people who had seen what they thought was a man carrying a handgun. And again, the drone was used, and that was a butane-shaped lighter that was shaped like a handgun. So, yeah, these devices are probably, you know, enjoyed by their owners, but they could cause a lot of problems out there.
But the good news is that the drone went on to star in the drone show
I think the
later that
drone's
day.
having a moment. Speaking of things that are having a moment, what about Canada's soccer team?
Ugh, can't wait for that next game.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And Mary, you want to talk a bit about what kinds of viewing parties we might see and how our communities are getting ready for the big game on Saturday?
Yeah, everyone's talking about it. The city of Coquitlam, I discovered this morning, has added a bonus outdoor viewing opportunity. They've had their soccer viewing parties at various locations, Percy Perry Stadium, Town Center Park, and Blue Mountain Park. And they're going to be bringing their big screen up to Blue Mountain Park on Saturday morning for an outdoor viewing event there. Um, they say doors open or gates open at 9. I don't think it's gated. I think it's just it's in a park. But the match starts at 10. And Port Coquitlam has been having viewing parties for every match so far, or most every match, at the Terry Fox Hometown Square in behind the Port Coquitlam Community Center on Wilson Avenue. Plaza Brentwood is where I went for the Canada-Qatar match, and it's quite lively and quite a nice location to watch the match. They have a big screen sort of posted up above. There's lots of little sitting places and things you can perch on to watch. It does get a little bit warm, so if it is a warm day, you want to make sure you bring an umbrella to shield yourself from the sun.
But the big question, Mario, is where are you going to be?
I don't know. Probably here at home. I have a pretty nice TV, so. The thing is, though, and you have to be aware of this at Brentwood, is everyone on different cable systems and streaming systems, all these things happen at different times. I know in the condo where I live, at the gold medal match of the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, apparently my service is a little bit slower than others. So you'd hear people, yay! And that is a thing at Brentwood. So if you're
Yeah.
going to Brentwood, keep a heads up that the plaza is surrounded by restaurants and their TVs are a little bit faster than the big screen in the plaza.
That is wonderful. And Cornelia, I know you've been keeping a very close eye on this. Where are you going to be?
Well, for the Canada-Switzerland game, I went to the PNE, the big watch party at the Arch, and seating was beautiful. It was great, and lots of enthusiastic fans. And I think that was enough crowd for me. So from now on, I'm watching it in the comfort of my own home so I can really focus on the game. It's too intense for me to be around people.
Well, Teresa, how about you?
Jeff, I will be with you at Tri-Cities Pride. We'll be staffing the Freshet booth there, and I may or may not have my phone open to try to see what's happening. Although I'm kind of guessing there's going to be some sort of a TV somewhere in the building that will be hearing what's happening. If
Yes.
I wasn't there, though, I would be at Queen's Park Arena in New West, because I did go there for the last game, and it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of folks in there, and it was kind of fun just to be watching it with your community members.
Well, thank you for that, Teresa. And it's a good segue into reminding everybody that Coquitlam Pride is taking place on Saturday from 12 to 5 at the Evergreen Cultural Center. And Freshet News is a diamond level sponsor. So you'll see our logo on a few things. And Teresa and I will be there part of the day. And Cornelia and Mario will also be there after the game. So, and for the rest of what's coming up over the next week, please visit the What's On section on our website. Janice normally does this, but she is having a much deserved break over the last few days. So we hope she is enjoying it. So I now wanted to turn to talking about your favorite stories of the week. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. My favorite story is actually an update on a story that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Tim Costomo, who was doing the 1,200-kilometer race to Alaska from Port Townsend, Washington to Ketchikan, Alaska, to raise money for Burnaby Hospital. You'll remember that he's a Burnaby Hospital orthopedic surgeon, and he was raising morale at Burnaby Hospital after the cancellation of the contract for phase 2 of that facility for the Burnaby Hospital redevelopment, but also to raise money for much-needed surgical equipment. He said that one of the biggest needs was a mobile x-ray machine that would be cost in the neighborhood of $250,000. If you read our last edition of Freshet News, you'll know that after talking to him, adventuresome, very generous couple donated $250,000 to his campaign. And so they've reached their fundraising goal, but they've run into some issues and have since stopped their trip. They were forced to stop their trip on July 1st when they ran into 5 days of, I just got this update today, actually via text from Dr. Costomo. They ran into 5 days of unremitting heavy storms. There was some damage to the mast that was not repairable, and so they decided to pull the plug. They started running into the bad weather in Cable River, and they managed to make it to Port McNeill, which is on close to the northern tip of Vancouver Island. But they decided they needed to pull the plug. What was the final total? I'm just going to give you the final total of what they raised.
Drum roll.
Yeah. Okay. $262,139 for Burnaby Hospital surgical equipment. It's pretty impressive. And he sent a video that looks just intense in high seas. They were only able to use sails and oars. They weren't allowed to even have a motor on board. So pretty intense stuff. He's happy to be coming back because he's got surgeries booked on July 6th that he needs to get to. He showed some photos of his hands. They were just wrinkly and shredded, like waterlogged and wrinkly and shredded. He said they'll heal by the time July. So that was kind of
his patients hope so.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of a fun end to a little epic journey that I've been following of his.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Cornelia. How about you, Mario?
I really enjoyed writing up that little Netflix story. I've now made note to watch that movie, to, if nothing else, spot the location, see what other spots I might be able to recognize. But I think, as we talked about, it's just a fun thing to do when you know something's been shot locally, or even when you suspect something may have been shot locally. Even if the quality of the movie or program isn't the best, it is fun to kind of spot those scenes that are familiar and see how they're used and see where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, that was always funny. And also sometimes where you've got two scenes that were taken in different parts of the community and they take 2 seconds to get there and no, that is not possible. How about you, Teresa?
I really enjoyed doing a story about the new outpost, as they call it, at the Anvil Centre. It's something that the New Westminster Public Library Board has been working on for some time. And so they now have machines that are up and running just inside the entrance on Columbia Street. So you can go in and you can withdraw items. There's books, there's CDs, there's other materials. And then there's also another machine where you can return items. The other thing you can do at this location is if you have reserved a book or a library item, you can ask that it be sent to Anvil Centre. So if you order something from the main branch, you can have it sent to Anvil. You go down there, and at the unveiling last week, they did a little demonstration. And as someone who's not super techy, it actually looked like it was pretty simple to do. It was lovely being at the opening. The library staff and the library board folks are just so enthusiastic about this. And then I actually was chatting with a family who was from Burnaby. They were just visiting friends down in downtown and had gone over to the Quay and then stopped into the library. While they were there, they signed up for the summer reading club and very kindly posed for photos for Freshet News because, I mean, you know, the most adorable 4 and 8-year-old sisters that you could see. And yeah, so it just made for a fun assignment.
Yeah, that was a very cute photo. I really enjoyed that. Well, my favorite story this week is actually about us. So you'll see that Janice has a story about how Freshet News donors can now get a tax receipt. It's through a partnership we have with Van City Community Foundation for support through a mutual aid fund. So I would encourage everybody to take a look on our website and get the details on this and how you can participate. It's a really exciting development for us as an organization. So with that commercial plug over, that wraps up another Freshet Friday podcast, but we'll be back soon. In the meantime, feel free to pick up a copy of the most recent print newspaper at your local coffee shop, grocery store, drugstore, community center, city hall, or recreation center. A link to distribution points is included in the description of this episode. You can also enjoy the very latest local news on our website at freshetnews.ca, and make sure you subscribe to our weekly email newsletter, which you can request from the Support Us tab on our website. It's a great way to start off a slow Sunday morning over a cup of coffee. In the meantime, keep asking yourself the question, is it Freshet Friday yet? And come on back when the answer is yes. Thanks to our team for being here. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.